So after the Phantom, you moved on to the Tornado. How did you feel about this?
I missed the Phantom. Most of us would like to have seen it make a bit of a longer term in service. There were modifications proposed to keep the aeroplane viable, change the radar, change the cockpit. But in reality, it was a tired aeroplane.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the operating system, but the actual airframes were starting to see the end of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to the F3, for me, was a good thing. I'd had 2 years on the ground. I'd had an opportunity operating at the air-to-air missile establishment as their ops officer, running air-to-air missile firings in Cardigan Bay. I'd seen the F3 and I'd seen how good it was in terms of a weapons system.
Mm-hmm.
I'd got the feeling it was probably better than the F4 by the time I got to it. A lot of my compadres went to the F3 and the F2 days where it still wasn't a mature system and were a lot less positive about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I really sort of thought, it's all right. Guys were starting to talk positively about it. I'd seen it as a weapon system quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't upset. I was pleased to get back in the air. I was pleased to see the aeroplane. And as it turns out, it had a little bit less feel than a Phantom, but it still had feel. You could feel the performance, you could tell what it was doing. If you got the wing in the wrong place when you were turning, I mean, that was obviously the big difference between the F4 and the F3 was an extra lever and the wing. But if you got the wing in the wrong place, you could feel the difference in performance and that you were doing something the aeroplane didn't like. The F4 itself, single 45 swept wing, basically a typical 50s supersonic wing, wasn't optimised for slow speed or really super high speed. And our slightly chubbier Spey engine model again had a higher drag as it went through the Mach. The F3, although less powerful than the Phantom, when you'd got the wings moving, you had a much better drag profile, particularly from about 0.9 Mach through the Mach, and again at a low level. So by moving the wings and keeping the centres of gravity, pressure and the amount of drag to the minimums, the aeroplane was a lot slippier. You only really noticed it wasn't so powerful when you were trying to sustain turn, not sustain turn, where it would bleed energy more quickly. You'd generate drag and it didn't have the power to overcome the amount of drag you were generating in the same way as the F4. I did chase an F-111 down a valley in Scotland.
Oh,
the
really?
F-111 was pretty damn fast at low level. The head-up display has a switch on it which you can switch between indicated airspeed and Mach, but it doesn't show you both heads up, it only shows you heads down both. So I was chasing an F-111 and I noticed all the instruments flicker. And the aircraft had just slipped supersonic in a valley in Scotland without even giving any heartache or indication. I'd noticed no change in the acceleration. And we caught the F-111, which was always pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.